The Best Damn League show has returned. Obviously, it is the end of the LEC Versus split, which I'm informed isn't an LEC split. It's in the name. It's literally in the name. Also, qualifies you to first stand, so just like LEC then. And at the end of it all, what are you talking about? It's just LEC. So anyway, it's LEC Winter is now LEC Versus. It's all good. Listen, at least we're not in China where they're actually on some nightmarish, like, dystopia, like, Split 1 has been completed, sir. Like, the fuck? That's about the least sexy name. But anyway, LEC Versus is over. The split's done. So we've got a little bit of time now because we've got first stand coming. And then it's something like 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks until the first split, the spring split begins. Our guest for this episode, even though because of his Twitter it says LOL Roundup, it is Andrew DiStefano, who is someone you might have seen on Twitter. He has a YouTube channel also where he does put it this way, if you like LS type stuff, but you don't want the flamboyance of LS, but you still want really in-depth analysis and having your own angles to grind and different things that annoy you, this is your cup of tea. I can tell you, just go there, just all the drafts, all the stuff that nerds say they want, but do they want? We'll find out in this episode. So obviously we're going to get his thoughts on the LEC. And since now our new meta is we start with the spiciest topic, actually we're going to start with a take of yours. So we're going to start in the bad section. Andrew, what is bad right now in LEC? What don't you like?
So the lack of hype leading up to the finals, it just felt, you got this LEC Versus and, LR and KCB were, driving a lot of that at first, but you get to the playoffs and it's the eliminations and leading up to the finals, it just felt like maybe due to format, but also just the players in general, I don't feel that it's like they're going through the motions, right? Before the game, we're asking them like, hey, how do you feel about the match in the series? Are you going to get your revenge against G2? And it's like, oh, we're going to get our revenge. And it's like, I don't know. I don't feel I don't feel the intensity there. Like you see in other esports, the intensity throughout the series, before the series, after. I mean, CBLOL, we just saw Frosty and Redbert have something to say to each other after a series. And it's like, you don't see that in Europe. You don't see it in NA. And I mean, the players just seem like either they're holding back or they don't have that. You need to be somewhat entertaining to make it have some hype. It didn't feel like it had any hype.
I think that's more than fair. And look, Thorin did a very good introduction for Andrew, but I'm going to add one more thing from Andrew, which is if you don't look at his content already, he is the person who you watch if you want to see like you want to learn about America's Cup, you want to like...
He has every region, yeah.
Yeah, he like does literally everything. So it's very interesting you mentioned this because for European viewers who don't know, there was basically a bit of conflict between the two supports on the two teams in the final. One of whom has like a support who some people considered wash, who's called Redbert, and like this guy Frosty, who's a bit of a toxic personality. They're having a bit of an argument, and basically at the end, Frosty basically went on Twitter and said, "This guy's washed. It's going to be easy." And Redbert basically won the title and showed his medals, brought his medals to the stadium, and when they were shaking hands at the end, like basically stuffed the medals in his face as close as you could do without being violent, right? Which was that's kind of what was going on in CBLOL. Obviously, CBLOL's a little bit crazy in that regard, which is one of the reasons CBLOL aficionados like that region. But what I will say from the LEC side is that I think part of it is part of the lack of hype was a little bit on the players, but I also think it's a little bit on the games as well, because it kind of felt inevitable. So obviously the final was a really, really good final. Yeah. But like just watching G2 just like walk these teams, in upper bracket, just destroying KC in upper bracket, destroying Koi in upper bracket, who did they play in the first round? Heretics, right?
Heretics,
Heretics, yeah. So the fact that G2 were just like going 2-0, 2-0, 3-0, you just thought, we're back in 2019 again, nothing exciting is going to happen. So I think that kind of also took a little bit of the hype out of it. I do think, the viewership looked a bit rough, but I will say that the finals, despite everything, despite the lack of hype coming into the finals, the fact that the finals was such a banger and that G2 like made so many mistakes in that final, individual mistakes, so the series looked really close. I think, is that like the highest LEC peak for like a few years, no? The finals.
Could
Game 5
be.
of the finals for viewership. I can't remember.
I don't know. Viewership, KC is going to boost viewership for sure.
Yeah. But the finals itself, I think, got a lot of viewership because it was like a really, really hype series. But yeah, like this playoffs, the number of 2-0 series and 3-0 series in the series, in this playoff series, was really unfortunate. And when you have a lot of these situations where there doesn't seem like a lot of the players just seem afraid to say anything, or like they're too friendly with each other, or there's no like grudge, you know, even Yike and G2, which was like the big story from last year, you know, it seems like, oh, they've made peace, oh, they're just being respectful. Yeah, I kind of get where you're coming from. And you know, if the games are hype and you've got that, I don't think it matters. But when the games are like every single series is 2-0, like I think every series in the first round was 2-0. It's a bit rough. I
put it this way. I know what you. Yeah, go on.
No, it just feels like it's been like I guess this might be where it's reaching a breaking point for me, I guess, because it seems not only even just this series in general, but I feel like comparing it to other esports and just even CBLOL, but just in general, like they are like friends, and I don't know, I get it, like you have teammates and a lot of former teammates, and maybe because these teams are always intermixing and matching, it's like, I wonder how many players really haven't been with, you know, these, like, I feel like everybody's a teammate at this point because just everybody's played together, you know? So there is like that respect of being a former teammate. And at the same time, it's just like, where are the rivalries? Where's the storyline? You know, it just, I don't know. I didn't feel it.
But this way, I do actually think this is a very good split to make this point on because of how great the final was, and the game 5 was actually insane. Like, I actually think, sadly, because live people didn't catch that, like, fucking Caps versus Kiahu play. I actually feel like fans don't even know how insane the ending of that game was. Like, basically, Casey probably should have won and done some absurd reverse sweep, which is probably the greatest storyline, like, European fucking League of Legends history, but it didn't happen thanks to Caps, which itself is like a fucking banger, like, shonen anime storyline, isn't it, the idea? He is Goku and just can't be beaten. I know what you mean. Put it this way, if I told you before the split, the top 3 teams that are going to decide the title are G2, KC and MKOI, we should be, all the drama in the world should be lined up. Those are the best possible ones, like the original kings that you need for the narrative of LEC, G2, and then you've got the 2 biggest, most active fan bases that normally go psycho. But I know what you mean. Like, first of all, I do think the bracket actually killed the hype, as Peter says, because like the hype before the upper bracket game of KC and G2 was huge. Even I'd say MKOI probably believe they could still win it. So after the upper bracket, though, I do think, even though the final ended up being amazing, I do think a lot of people thought, well, now G2 just wins, don't they? Like, it doesn't even matter. It's just who plays them in the final sort of shit. But I know what you mean, because put it this way, here's where I actually think people make a mistake. People assign the hype of KC and MKOI to the teams. It's like, no. The hype is the fans and the streamers, like the owners or the CEOs and the fans. The players themselves actually don't particularly lean into that, except maybe when they're on like homestand type scenarios. But even then, they seem to be fairly mild. I know what you guys mean. I actually feel like, if anything, LEC's been bad for this for many, many years, mate. Because actually, the vibe I get, ever since we went away from the like G2 Mox Fnatic while they beat them in the final era, it does feel like, as you guys are saying, like everyone's too friendly. Like, let's just play the best game and I hope you win. I'll give someone an example of a story, right? Believe it or not, in Counter-Strike, we're considered an esport where this is the opposite, right? We're the best one for shit-talking people because you don't get punished by a Riot Games, basically. You can do things like in Counter-Strike, if people don't know, last year, because he was criticised, the in-game leader of the team that won like almost every tournament, at the major, we came up on a platform and gave the whole crowd the finger like this while filming himself doing it, and not only not got punished, we all loved it. We all thought, this is fucking epic. Like, he's even like baiting the crowd like some Conor McGregor-esque shit, you know. But the problem is, even in Counter-Strike, I've seen this before, so this is the example I want to make. There was a major in 2021, which was the first one we had after COVID, right? The first time we're all back at a big LAN, it's a major, and even double the prize money, believe it or not, so it was like super epic. And in the final, we had 2 of the best superstars ever in Counter-Strike, Nico and Simple, right? And at the time, neither of them had ever won a major. So I remember thinking, oh, this is going to be amazing, because one of them's guaranteed to win the major. When they then got the opportunity to trash talk on stage by the host, James Banks, he was sort of like, you know, what do you want to say to the other guy? They absolutely failed on exactly this point. One of them just went like, good luck. And And then the other one for real was like, I hope we both have a great game. And I even said on the desk at the time, because I worked this event, like, that is the wackest shit talk of all. I said, even if you actually are friends, you've got to at least give me something as the audience. Like, give me a bit of WWE, you know? Because I've always thought, and this is the point I'm going to make, you're going to see where I'm going with this. I've always thought the best part about the enforced trash talk of LCK/OGN is they do it like anime. They won't just say, like, I'm going to beat you. They'll say some mad shit like, you cried last finals and I'm afraid you will cry again this time. Like, they say like the meanest shit ever because you're sort of allowed to and encouraged in that setting to do like villain-esque trash talk, aren't you? And here's what I don't think people get. I actually think our league, LEC, is perfectly primed for exactly that segment, boys. A segment before the grand final that you get the two teams and you tell them, now don't worry, we're going to tell the audience like the LCK trash talk. This is a trash talk segment. And if people don't know, by the way, I can tell you behind the scenes, the players don't even come up with half that shit in Korea because they are just boring nerds. It's stimulated by the producer. He tells them, and maybe you could say this, weren't you teammates with him before? They come up with angles off camera and then they wait till they get the sound bite and then click, we got it, and then that's the clip that gets played. The reason why I always thought that was genius in Korea is because every Korean fan, if they're not a lunatic, understands that isn't just them catching them on fucking candid camera. They've been told to trash talk. So because you've been told to do it, it is like WWE. It's not real, is it, in the same way? But I actually think for LEC, if you had that type of trash talk, it would be fucking amazing. Because I'll give you a couple of quick angles. One is, if you have someone like G2, it doesn't matter if they're going to win. What you need then is you need to go and find the hottest player. Kalist would be the obvious example. And you get Kalist to say some shit like, Hans Sama, you were a great champion in the past, but now is my time. You know, these anime lines, aren't they? And I'll give people a very quick story of how epic you can actually make a match if you do this. Which is, we're going to go back in time, like 15 years or something in StarCraft. In StarCraft, two of the greatest players ever in Korean StarCraft is a Protoss player called Busio and a Zerg player called Savior, right? And what happened was, Savior was the first one who was the top player out of these two. And at the time, he'd been a champion something like 3 times in a row. And what happened was, when he played lost in the 4th final or whatever it was to his rival, what would later become his rival, this player called Busio, in the next tournament, they used to have this cool thing in Korean StarCraft in one of their tournaments where you actually would get to pick who was in your group and you were encouraged to trash talk while you did it. So in this setting, right, there was some scenario where like one of them, like Busio or something, said like, oh, I'll put the Savior guy in my group to play him again or something. And the Savior guy said some trash talk like, I'm a 3-time champion. You know, you've only won 1 time. Come back and see me when you've won 3. Now, that storyline just ends there if it's a normal player. But what he didn't know was his rival, this Busio guy, actually did go on to win 3 championships. And so, like, 2 years later, this is dope. Like something out of an anime. Yep. The Busio guy then did exactly the same thing. He was in a group selection thing, and he put that guy into his group and said, you told me to come back when I have the 3 championships, and now I have them. And it was like, it's just like fucking a next on Dragon Ball Z, what will happen in the battle. You were like, this is fucking unbelievable writing. Like, notice the match can be the exact same. The bracket we're talking about can be the exact same. But if you just put a little bit of narrative on like that, it would just enhance the whole thing so much more. And the reason why this one, by the way, is a real bomber is because this is one of the best finals LEC's ever had. But I know what you mean. Because KC didn't complete it, I think it'll actually be forgotten and people just remember G2 won the playoffs and it'll be the same as usual. I think you've got a very good point there, Andrew, because we've obviously got people and fan bases who could do trash talk. These people are spicy. But for some reason in LEC at the moment, they're just holding it back a bit for whatever reason.
And I think even you bringing up the being able to select your opponents, you know, back in StarCraft, like how hype would it be if teams act like, I know in the LCK they did it a bit, right, where they were able to pick their opponents, yes, but I feel like there is something to be said for a team picking their opponent in the playoffs, you know, if it was, you know, single elimination, obviously it would be even more hype.
Yeah.
But there is something to be said for that. Like, I am picking you because I think I can beat you, you know, like straight up.
Yes.
And that'd be huge in my opinion. that would create itself. The storylines would
Yeah.
be created from that.
Also, you know, when you do that thing of like, yeah, but they're all friends, and then everyone now who's parasocial wants to believe that narrative, like, they're all just great guys, then get me out of this sport, because I don't want that. I want the sports that have psychopaths who do sit up all night long thinking about the time they lost that last final, just plotting like how I'm going to... In fact, I like the guys, here's my favourite type of player. I like the player who, when he loses and cries, what he thinks about every next night is, oh, I'm going to make my rival cry at the next one. I want him to feel this pain. That's what I want nutters like that. I don't want people like, well done, sir, great game, excellent performance. What are we doing? No, I agree. I think it's a great opening point.
Also, on the picking thing, it's also hilarious when things go wrong, you know. But I don't know how many LCK watchers we have here, but obviously there's the famous time where KT picked
2023, yep.
Yeah, and then they got absolutely, well, then they lost that series.
And in hindsight, that's even better, because they picked them for real when actually KT was better, KT was the best team, and T1 was bad, but it's even better in hindsight because T1 won that Worlds.
Yeah, of course.
Which now looks even stupider, but it's true, it's true.
I mean, I will put one thing in defense of the LEC play, which is that there have been times in the past where, I'm just going to say it, right? Like when KC and Koi came into the league, right? And some trash talk happened in that direction, and some people took it too far. Like, you know, there were times where...
You think fans take it too far, you mean?
Yeah, rather than the players. Like, I know that KC fans will say, oh, you know, it's a minority of fans, and yes, it is a minority of fans, but, you know, when they came into the league and somebody was trash talked, or somebody trash talked them, then there were, like, huge amount of death threats. Like, huge amounts of death threats when anyone was trash talking KC. So then it becomes a bit boring, you know? It becomes a bit boring to trash talk them because you don't want to get like 100, you know, when the fan imbalance is so large, like, you know, Vitality and KC should have a massive rivalry, right? Why should they have a massive rivalry? It's because KC accuse Vitality of poaching their jungler, and Vitality accuse KC of not telling the Linkus that, you know, he had an offer, and like there's a lot of bad blood there, right? Mm-hmm. But the difference in the size of the fan bases makes any kind of like trash talking in that area like really complicated, I would say. What I think is the interesting points where we get interesting trash talk, I think, is especially between KC and Koi. I think like actually we get really good trash talk between KC and Koi because the fan bases basically like really dislike each other, and you know, players know that they will have the backing of their fan base whenever they go and trash talk, so it's easier for them to trash talk without punching down, right? Like no one on Koi thinks that they're punching down by shit talking KC, whereas maybe they think they're punching down if they shit talk GX, you know? Like it's not quite as fun, you know, in the same way. Mm-hmm. And obviously G2, I mean G2 it's a bit different now compared to how it was in the past, but I think G2 have always been, I think, a little bit of the spice that G2 had back in the day, I feel like is gone. I feel like a bit more professional image now as an all, which is a shame. You know, I think that's one of the things that Perks really gave to. Like, he wasn't afraid to be the bad guy, whereas I feel that a lot of the people on G2 don't really want to be the bad guy in that regard. So I think the really fun trash talk you get is between KC and Koi. And I think...
All the social media managers.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think...
Like, the Twitter account still works, but I know what you mean. The players definitely don't trash talk the same way. It's true.
Yeah, but like, also, if you're a player, let's say you're a player on GX, right? Or you're a player on Vitality. Do you really want to shit talk KC and get...
No, your point is, there's not... here's the difference. There's not as much upside for you because you don't have a giant fan base, but you'll just get all the downside of their fan base sending you the messages, is what you mean, right? Yeah, true.
Exactly. And I think that's... When I say that the players like each other, I feel like KC players especially, like, I feel like a lot of those guys are quite nice. Like, Busio is a good guy, and like some of those other people in KC, like, so they don't really want to mobilize their fan base in like, you know, because they know they're punching down, right? Unless it's against Koi. If it's against Koi or Glug, you know, then do whatever fuck you want, right? But you don't do that to Vitality or GX. But obviously, as kind of a neutral viewer, it does take a bit away.
Yeah. And also, as you guys referenced, it's not like the LEC never had this. Like, I tell you what, boys, now's when you do miss my boy Perks, don't you? Because I'll tell you what, just like Ocelot, his fucking partner in crime, these guys couldn't stop talking shit. And the best thing is, you all knew it was authentic, and they actually were arrogant as fuck, just like they said. Which, again, like I say, I love players like that. Give me that all day long, mate. All day long. Okay.
Well,
Go on.
it's marketable. In
Yes.
the end, it's a marketable thing. Like, LOL Esports needs to find ways to make more money, and
Yes.
being marketable is what they got to do.
Yes. Okay, Peter, what is your ugly point?
Okay, so I had a good. So it's funny we're starting with ugly because I had good points and ugly. Wait, you mean my bad point, right?
Sorry, yes, bad, yes,
Yeah.
sorry.
But I had good points and ugly points about the playoffs, so I was going to use my bad point as like a bridge.
Okay.
But let's talk about bridges. Okay, so we'll talk about the finals weekend later. But my bad point is about TH, right? It's about Heretics, right? Because they've already been knocked out. We're already going into the off season. It is rumored that they're going to replace Stend, you know? And I'll be honest, Stend and Ice look like they have negative synergy. It's possible, like, I feel like Stend was pretty good last year, but he was playing with Flackhead, who has this habit of making his supports look like the best supports in the
Yes.
league. He can make any support look. He's like the Niski of AD carry, you know? Like, Niski makes all of his junglers look insane. Flackhead makes all of his supports look insane. So maybe last year was an illusion. And, you know, I felt like, you know, I know some Spanish fans really dislike Sten, but I felt last year he was pretty fucking good. But this split, he has been one of the worst players in the league, right? So if you want to go and replace him, I'm not going to go and argue the point in the same way that I would have said you're crazy to do it in the last off season, because maybe you've decided your team is like Ice and Serin, and you want like a support that fits in with those guys, right? And clearly there's some synergy issues. I feel like it's first split, but clearly there's synergy issues, so maybe something is unfixable. However, the thing which I'm going to say that is really, really bad about this is Gidon, who is the coach of Heretics, gave an interview at the start of the season saying no changes this year, right? He's saying like we're not going to make changes. We're going to go and we're going to have a slow start. We expect a slow start. We don't expect anything from the first split, and we're going to build. Heretics showed huge improvements over the course of the split. They were pretty rubbish at the start of the split, and then by the time they went into playoffs, they had the best record against everyone in the top 8, you know, in best of ones. Then they got kind of destroyed by G2, and they had a very close series against G2, right? Like it was a 2-1 series. Noah ended up just like smurfing in that series, but basically they showed improvement, and then they're immediately making a change after one split. And to me, this is a clear way. I really, really dislike when orgs, right? Because if this is the thing that you are setting out, you set out at the start of the year, we're not going to make changes, right? We are going to go and build a long-term project, and then 6 weeks later, 7 weeks later, you go and like toss all that in the bin. How could anyone, like, especially when you're an org that needs to recruit rookies or needs to like build for the long term, how can any future rookie trust what you're going to say if this is the way that you behave? You know, and this is kind of the problem I have with this, because firstly the org looks like they were on the path to improvement, but also they have stated, yeah, they've just gone off the path. They've gone off the path which they stated, and you know, like I said, there's a lot of fans. Stend is a French player playing for a Spanish org. He has a lot of like haters in Spain, like a lot.
That can't be a reason to get kicked from a team, though.
No.
I mean, like, it's just to appease the fan base.
Sure.
Right? Like, to me, it is to appease segments of the fan base. But I mean, my problem, the reason why this is a bad point, is I think that Heretics are an org that, you know, they stated it's a long-term project, and already 2 months in, they've decided that this project, like, what are they going to do? Are they going to go and sign like Targamas or something like this? Like the players they were rumored to be linked with are players like Targamas or like Wei, who's a player that has a lot of potential. But yeah, I don't think that you can afford to have your integrity called into question if you are a team that is looking to build long term. Yeah, because it's going to make it harder for you to sign the top rookies you want to sign in.
Yeah, that's. It seems like it happens all the time where teams make moves way too quickly, you know, and for them to say that they're going to commit to the roster and stand, like you said, last year he's a rookie. He's playing with a new AD carry in Ice. I mean, like you said, Flackett is very consistent. He's reliable. You can play off of him. And, you know, alongside Ice, and Ice isn't, you know, Ice is good, but at the same time, it's like you got to give a guy a chance, you know, and to succumb to pressure from the outside as a staff this early, like, what, if they say that they want Sheo out after spring, are you going to boot him? Like, what are we doing here? You know, you can't give the fans that much power really over what you're going to do if you want to actually have a shot.
Yes. No, first of all, I also echo the sentiment. I actually think Stead was underrated last year. And also, I'll go one further, Peter. If Flackhead is the ultimate support whisperer who calms the then you sign a Korean who seems like he just never talks and just clicks the mouse. You've gone the absolute opposite. That's night and day comparison. So you've also made it even harder for Stead. Here's what I don't get about that, by the way. Right? Forget for a second the Spanish-French thing, because I'm sorry, unless you're literally like Casey or something, or MKOI, who've really heavily leaned into it, you shouldn't even be doing that, mate. And you're just a team in the LEC. Spoiler, if you're Heretics, you don't have any of the Spanish fans anyway, you idiot. They're all on MKOI's side. It's the same way when BDS was in the league. I used to say, technically, BDS has been the French org the whole time, and they're way better than KC were when the KC first came in. But everyone was a KC fan. So at that point in time, you've got to know which one you're with. And in that case, if you can't fully embrace those fans, I wouldn't make org decisions based on it, because you're just getting up with the worst team. Here's what's weird is, forget the French thing. If the whole thing was Stent needs someone who can communicate with him, then you should have been the org that signed Exakick. That's another fucking French player who would just be a French bottler. That would be a slam dunk across the box. Here's what I don't get. Ice was a known quantity. He is a good player, by the way, but this is exactly what he was like in BDS. In BDS, the reason everyone gave mad props to Lavrov for the things they did in the game was everyone's pretty sure the Ice guy's never made a call in his life. He just fucking kills people and probably goes nice Sue or whatever. I imagine that's what he just does, but he's really good at that. So, and I also definitely agree about the rookie point, because if you think of the identity of Heretics at this point in time, they need to actually lean into the angle Peter's talking about of we're the org that gives you a chance if you're not the biggest prospect ever from the ERLs, and when we sign you, we don't just kick you straight away. Whereas think about this, last year they tried to pull, just like Vitality, that whole we're going with rookies. So they had 3 rookies, guys. They had Carlson top lane, they had Camillo mid lane, and they had Sten support. None of them are there now. Not a single one is there. Now look, in isolation, yes, Camillo never probably should have been there. Carlson was actually at one point in time looking promising. I get why you want Traces there, but I know what you mean. You can't in isolation make all these upgrades, but at the end just be I guess we don't believe in rookies and we don't develop anyone. We just basically we'll keep you for now, but if someone's better, then we get someone else. By the way, that's every other team. That's every other team's identity. They all just want the best players in a win. I know what you mean. If you want what you want this team to be, Peter, is you want it to be we're like Arsene Wenger, and we'll develop you into the player you're gonna become. And it doesn't matter if we're not the best team right now. We're gonna grow together and become great. Instead, this just makes it feel like we're just another LEC ERL team. We'll just cut you tomorrow, get the next guy who's hot for the minute. And also in this scenario, this is the worst part of all, and I'm sure you've got something to say about this, Peter. If I'm another player looking on, I'm now thinking, I just said that example of Exakick. If I'm Exakick, I'm thinking, actually, I wouldn't join a bottom team like Heretics. I'll look not that good, get kicked, and then I'll be checkaladded for the rest of my career, and I'll never get back in again. That's another reason I think Heretics have made the mistake of not realising, bro, you aren't in, the difference is, if GX won't upgrade, mate, do that all day long, you're that close to actually being really good. If you're Heretics, I agree, someone has to be the team in the league that leans into that angle of, we bring the rookies on, and if you failed it, if you're Heretics, because you haven't done it, you just have not kept to your word.
And I mean, to me, the problem is not if you want to behave in that way, that's fine, right?
Of course,
different management structures have responsibilities to sponsors, responsibility to certain players on your org. Maybe Ice is oh, I hate Sten. I never want to play with him again. He gets on my nerves. I can't understand his accent or something like this, right? Maybe it's like this, right? But then if you are going to fold at the first sign of pressure, don't give interviews saying the problem is not that they've made the change, right? I don't care that much that they want to make the change. I think it sucks for Sten, right? But for me, the problem is don't go out of your way to brand yourself as this org, which is going to give people the chance, long-term chance, because then it just makes you look firstly, it makes you look terrible, right? Secondly, it makes you look like liars, which, your integrity matters if you're not going to pay big bucks, right? And to me, that is the problem, right? It's not for me an issue of this is a bad replacement, a bad player to be replaced, right? It's an issue of we have set our stall out in this way, and now we're not going to follow through. And that is my problem. Don't give the interview, right? And it pisses me off because I think Trayson has a future. I think Shio is massively. I think Shio should have been on could have been on a different team this offseason, or if his career had gone a different direction, he could have been on a team that's perpetually at Worlds, right? He just went to BDS and then things didn't work out, and it just sucks, right? His career is on a trajectory that a player of his standard, he deserves more, right? From his what I would say. So I want Heretics to do well, But yeah, like it frustrates me because it's something which I feel is going to impact them long term, and obviously I want to see Heretics win because of there's people on that org that I want to see win, right? So that's why it's a bad point.
Yes. Right, for my bad point, I've picked what I feel like is a really obvious one, but obviously I'm taking the scraps of what's left over when these guys pick their points. Bro, being as in the final, I think that Game 5 should go instantly into the vault of like classic games, incredibly memorable. I actually hope people do go back and watch the slow-mo of that fucking amazing play I described earlier. On the other hand, the lower bracket final Game 5 was a fucking abomination. Like, so I've put as my bad, bro, MKOI's completely toothless 5th game in that series. Bro, they just fucked it from beginning to end. The draft's a nightmare. The fucking game is a nightmare. Jojo is a nightmare. Ilyoya is a nightmare. Like, bear in mind, MKOI, guys, was up 2-1 in that series. There's a totally plausible world against like people like Yahoo who are like brand new to the LEC. You could be the other team in the final. You maybe even going to have a chance yourself against G2. If you paused it at 2-1 and said the series ends 3-2 and in the 5th game you just get completely ruffle stomped and you're not even in the match, like what a disappointing end, especially bearing in mind how great the final was. What do you think of this Game 5, mate? What do you think, Andrew?
It's really a shame because Koi continued to run this roster, and obviously Jojo's in here now, last year, and it's just I feel like the coaching staff really doesn't maximize what these players can do. I really don't think so. And when you have a big moment like this in Game 5, I want a player like Supa to be that player that we saw prior.
Yeah.
And it seems like over the last year or so, he just isn't that player anymore. And when you go up against a team like KC, you need Supa to show up in a big way. You need him to be aggressive. And
yes.
I don't feel like I feel like he's held back, and that affects in these big moments. It's in the back of your mind, like, oh well, you're not playing like yourself. I think in a moment like that, you can't be thinking about anything but playing like your best version of yourself. So I don't know. I just think Koi's got issues for sure.
What did you think of the Gwen jungle pick? What do you think of that for a Game 5?
I mean, some people don't like fearless Game 5s because it's like, oh well, it feels like we're picking random crap.
Yeah.
But it's at the same time though, this is where like I am a big believer, the more shit you can play, the better. Like, you need to have players that can offer you different looks. Like, you can't just... If I know what's coming from this player, what type of champion they're going to play, they are easy to scout. They're easy to predict what's going to happen. You just can go on with the draft and know, hey, this player, I can just forget about it. So, I mean, the problem is some players don't have a lot of, picks in their pocket. So you pull out a Gwen and it's like, it's not great.
Yeah, I think part of the problem with this final is that they picked the Gwen and kind of hard countered with Akali, right? So Gwen is one of Mirwin's best champions. Like, he's really insane on the champion, but Koi never win when he plays the champion. Even though he always has like insane performances on Gwen. Like, I think his win rate on Koi, I don't know what it is, but it's lower than his level on the champions, right? Like he's very strong on the champion. So I think they were a bit worried about taking the lane matchup. But I think the problem with this series comes down to draft, right? Which is you go and look at the series between KC and Koi, and what happens every single game as the series progresses. Almost, sorry, not every single game, but as the series gets later and later into the series, one thing becomes very, very clear, which is that Koi can't play Mundo. Considered one of the strongest junglers on the patch. Elyoya is not willing to play it. They have first pick in the last game, and normally here in the last game, you would set up for a Mundo first pick and force the enemy team to ban it. Because what KC get to do in the last game is they get to ban Nami, so they deny Lucian Nami. They get to ban Caitlyn, so that's another champion that Super is really, really good on, and they get to ban Rumble, right? So they essentially get to ban 3 power picks and put Koi in a situation where they get very, very little value off their first pick. Because sure, they have Lucian Melio, but Lucian Melio isn't like some crazy, insane lane, right? Not the same way the Lucian army is. And it's because they never found a way to fit Mundo into their pool. Second thing is you notice that Mel is being banned a lot over the course of the thing, which means that either Jojo can't play it or they don't have a really good answer into it. Okay, and it makes me question. I think Koi had an issue in this playoffs, which is that their kind of champion pool got attacked in a way that they haven't been attacked before. Or maybe the meta hasn't been that unfavored. Okay, and I think KC exploited it well. They had the Kha'Zix jungle into Gwen, which is going to be obviously a really, really solid pick early. They had kind of all the answers, and I think if Koi were putting them in a situation where this is how they're going to draft, I think they should have just gone red, not red side, gone second pick, not gone first pick in this past game, because they got no value out of their first pick at all. And I think trying to make things work, the Gwen jungle is a pick you pick if you think that the enemy team is too bad to snowball on you, right? Like, it's a pick that it's going to be really, really great at 20 minutes, but you will do nothing. You will do literally nothing in the early game at all. I think they pigeonholed themselves. I think they pigeonholed themselves. I think that they weren't willing to play the Gwen Akali, which is, to be fair, really, really bad for Gwen in the top lane. And so Elyoya was like, sure, give me the Gwen. And, they play Cassante top. Akali still got fed even against the Cassante top. They have this comp that kind of somewhat wants to go in, someone wants to go poke. It doesn't really have like that much of an identity, and Casey just hard exploited by snowballing through the early. And yeah, I agree with you. I think it was a bit of a damp squib. Unfortunate end to the series, but I feel that Koi's hands were a bit tied in this series based on champion. So I just say, especially like they go Malphite as well. I think they went Malphite in game 4 and they went Gwen in game 5, where Koi against Casey is going to be all about skirmishing early around bot lane and all about skirmishing around mid. And the your last 2 games in the series, you have Malphite, which is nothing until level 6 jungler, and you have Gwen, which is arguably not even a thing at 6 as well from the jungle. And as a result, Casey just are able to be ahead in the most important part of the game, and Koi don't have enough. So yeah, I think KC has shown Koi what they need to fix going into next.
Well as that Game 5 being a classic, and the word classic reminded me of one of the best Naz tracks, how about the Raycon Everyday Earbud Classics? Because they're also available. You can also enjoy them. You could listen to this fine show on them. In fact, one of the ways I like to use pods like this is to listen to podcasts while you're doing something like cleaning your room, cooking or something, so you can be in the other room. At the gym, obviously, so you don't have that wire as you're doing the exercise, do that and rip the thing out your ear, which is one of my biggest pet peeves of all time, when the wired headphone gets ripped out and then you want to blame someone like, who did that? Oh, I did that. That was me. Fuck. Shit. Whatever. It's that. Obviously, you don't have the problem because of wireless for this. And also, they've got stuff like multi-point connectivity, so you can seamlessly switch between 2 things at once. They have the active noise, whatever you call it, cancellation, so you can remove sound from the background. And also they have not only 8 hours battery life, but they have like 32 hours or something in the case itself. So as long as you charge the whole case, you'll be able to use them for over a day. So you can get 20% off. By the way, this message obviously is sponsored by Raycon. You can get 20% off the Everyday Earbuds Classic by using the code LEAGUESHOW at buyraycon.com/League Show, and you will get 20% off. Thanks to Raycon for sponsoring. Shout out to anyone who uses them to listen to our fine podcast or anything else on the LFN network. Right, let's go. We'll reset and go to the good section now. So, Andrew, what is good right now? What's good in LEC?
Well, thank God for the LEC that KC were able to give G2 a real look and in the finals to take them to game 5, because after the first 2 games,
sure,
if it was an easy 3-0 for G2, I would be very worried for G2 going to first stand, because they did not get tested at all down the stretch, and they were kind of fumbling and bumbling their way at points through that stretch, making mistakes. And I mean, if they don't get punished for it at all, you'd like to think, G2, obviously that staff's been one of the best in the West for a while, so they do know how to, evaluate a win for what it is. But at the same time, some mistakes continue to happen, and you should not accept mistakes in a win that you wouldn't accept in a loss. So getting pushed by KC in the end was a blessing in disguise for them, because, I mean, it was scary there. If it was going to be a 3-0, I mean, I I mean, all right, the West has their hands tied behind their back going into first stand against LCK and LPL anyways. Now that there are 4 teams, you're in a battle for 5th. So it becomes a situation where, at least they're able to evaluate honestly, like, hey, we actually got punished for these mistakes. Obviously, we weren't going to get away with them at first stand, but now they can get a head start and actually fix what's broken, because it's kind of weird to say it's a good thing that they lost a couple games, but I really do think it was a blessing in disguise.
No, I fully agree with that. I think the difference between G2 in best of ones and G2 in best of threes and best of fives is that so if you're just like a lay fan, you may just come and think, okay, G2 trolling around best of ones rubbish format. There are but we see the real G2 ramping up for play or something. No, okay, I think that's not giving Dylan Falco enough, because what Dylan did over the course of this playoffs was, this is a really, really bad meta for Hans Summer, right? Like, Lucian is not that viable a pick, but it's good, but it's not like insane. Draven is not a champion, which is obviously one of his best champions. Stuff which he's been really, really good on in the past. Things like Cogmore are not really that strong. Varus, Mega, people know not to give Hans Hammer Varus, right? And he's never been a Caitlyn player, right? Like Hans Hammer, he's in his career, he's not amongst the best Caitlyn players. What Dylan Falco has managed to do in this over the course of this split is find a way to put Hans Summer in a situation where to kind of protect him in draft, right? Or to work on things which were historically big weaknesses. And he had part of the credit. You should give credit for this, is that they had a Caitlyn game against Casey in the finals, where Caitlyn isn't banned because Casey are like, why would we ever ban Casey into this team? Caitlyn into this team. They pick Caitlyn Bard into Lucian Nami, and he actually has a reasonable game here on a champion which is like his worst of the meta champions, is like one of his worst champions, and they've worked out that this is something that people will try to exploit, and they found a way to come and preserve it, right? And this is the thing I think that separates kind of G2 from some of the other teams. We talked about draft with MKOI, right, coming into playoffs. G2 recognized in the best of ones, okay, we have massive flaws that we have kind of in our draft setup, in our player comfort. So they spent a lot of time working on those things, and you can see that they spent a lot of time working on those things, because G2's win rate was kind of bad in scrims, right? Compared to, because Roman always posts their scrim results.
Yes.
They were this year. They didn't even scrim. They didn't even scrim KC for like half of the split, because they were getting murdered in scrims by KC. Because I assume they were trying to fix issues in their draft. And when it really, really mattered, they had those things fixed. They had Yasuo ready. They had Caitlyn ready, right? And this, I think, is also something which G2 get a lot of credit. But they had to show those things against KC. And KC, probably a little bit through how they were doing in scrims, but a little bit through their own play. KC are not a team that will roll over and let you beat them, okay? They are a team which you have to beat, okay? Like, you can't just, just sit there till 40 minutes and hope they'll fuck up, because their team fighting is so good that if you get to 40 minutes, sometimes KC can have slightly dodgy early games, sometimes they can get really far behind, but they will still out-team fight you from 5k down, so you need to snowball cleanly against them, and you need to draft in a way that will give you the tools to beat them either in the late game or snowball clean, right? And I think having a team like this that won't roll over, that will fight you, that won't make mistakes, so you have to force on them, is really, really good for G2 over the course of this entire year, but very important going into first stand. But for me, I think some of it is, good that they had KC to test them, but also credit to Dylan. And I think Dylan Falco had lots really, really good draft plans into the finals, because honestly, I think KC kind of played better, especially that game 5. I think KC kind of played better than G2. It's just, with the exception of Caps. It's just that they were ahead enough in draft that they were able to close out the series. Like I think that maybe you swap the coach. Okay, that sounds like I'm being mean to Dylan. You trade Dylan for, sorry, to repeat. You trade Dylan for an NPC. I think G2 kind of lose that final. You put like AI versus AI drafting in that final. I think KC win. So credit to KC, but also credit to G2 coaching staff for fixing the issues coming into playoffs.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Their drafts. I mean, it is important. Like I feel like I'm thinking back to some stats I've put up on the board the last couple of years, and I'm thinking about G2 and just how it felt like out of all of them, it was Hans that kind of had, those champions like Caitlyn that he really didn't play all that much that other people did. And it is important that they did get a real look too in a big moment with it. And it wasn't, like best of ones. For a team like G2, like you need to develop great habits. And at the same time, if you know you're getting there, you might also want a really good look at what you're going to throw out there draft-wise. So, I don't know. I think over time, they were testing things out and then took it more seriously. And Dylan also reined it all in as well. So.
I guess we're just rolling all the G2 points in one here, so it's all good. I'll do mine. I'll change my good point too to something else. So I will say the aspect that you guys have sort of briefly touched on that I also think is amazing is actually, I was thinking exactly of making a point about that scrim record thing, Peter, where Remain posts the literal scores of the scrim blocks that they have where you play the 5 games. And this is the craziest shit ever, because I'm going to make a point about this split, but it just is the same for the whole time. If you watch the last 2 years of G2, you'll know what I'm about to say. Right, first of all, as Peter pointed out, in the final, they were having to play KC, who, by the way, has just handed them their ass the entire split based on that scrim results. As Peter says, they just stopped even scrimming them after the first few weeks, like the BO1 par, because they were just getting bodied constantly, as in they were literally routinely losing scrim blocks 4-1 to KC. And if you remember, in the LEC at the time, and the BO1s, KC looked like the best team. So even though, yes, you beat them in that upper bracket semi-final, after they won that MKOI game, you could easily see a world where once you do lose that 3rd game in the final, and they start doing this comeback, you could easily see any normal team could actually have a little bit of doubt creep in, a bit of the momentum goes away, you start to wonder, like, shit, are they actually just better than us? Like, actually, the games we played in scrims implied they are. But I'm just going to say, the G2 coaching staff, how they have managed the mental state of these players is unbelievable. Because I'm sorry, every single time they won these finals for the last 3 years, guys, it wasn't just Caps. Like, in fact, some of them, Caps wasn't even the best player. Sometimes Hansam would be the best player. Sometimes, obviously, Skumon's been fucking unbelievable in some of these matches. Mm-hmm. So, if people don't know, not only did they lose to KC early on, the entire split, by the way, of all the teams, GX has been beating them most of the time. If anyone looks at the scrim results, that would probably shock people, although if people don't know, apparently even last year, GX are just like scrim demons. And if everyone remembers these documents last year, this is going to actually blow your mind if you don't look at them. Because last year, it was actually that Fnatic that everyone mocked, used to routinely beat G2 also. And then here's the last detail. Because once you made the upper bracket final, it's just KC playing MKOI and the other teams might even be on break, they had to scrim like LFL teams. Like, they were playing against fucking Solarian Galleons, and even then they were losing a game to each of them. So one thing I think is incredible, I think this can't be overstated, is how fucking insane the G2 coaching staff is at, like, getting the mental state of the team into a place where they're, like, resistant to this sort of shit. Because as I say, I know, put it this way, I won't make an extended metaphor for this, but if anyone knows in StarCraft 2, that was one of the first times where you had all these Western champions like Naniwa and DiStefano, they would all go to Korea, right, and try and play that competition, the GSL, which is basically like LCK. It takes like a month to play out. It's tons of matches. You have all this prep time. And famously, right, the reason why almost no Westerners ever had success in this competition is because when you go to Korea, the scrim environment is so much harder, just like it is in League, that when you go as a Westerner, even though you're used to being the best in your region, you start at the bottom of the totem pole, as it were. You just lose all the time. Like, you'll go there, by the way, and I've heard that both in League and in StarCraft it was like this. You'll go there, by the way, and forget just top players. You'll be losing to nobodies. People who don't even play in the league, or practice partners, or, the sub team of a squad. You'll lose to them and you'll be like, fuck, am I this far behind? And you have to, like, work your way through it. So the point I'm making is this, right? the only people who made it in that kind of an environment back in the day were people who had crazy mental fortitude and could get through the losses and not let that affect them. Because in an ideal world, everyone says they want practice, right? Not to be about trying to win the scrim. Everyone says you're not supposed to try and win the scrim. You're supposed to practice what you want to practice. You practice the draft pick. You practice lane assignments. You practice comms in the game. Everyone says that, but that's just some bullshit you say for the cameras. In reality, most pro players in LEC and LCS not only want to win the scrim to feel like they're better and to feel they have confidence, they need to. I'll even say need to. I think actually most teams for real need to have like a 60 to 70% win rate in scrims. And if they don't, then you can actually feel like you're not going to win the league. What I'm amazed by is that essentially I've watched these documents Remains put out for the last 2+ years now, and every fucking split there is at least one team has G2's numbers in scrims, and you would never know if you only watched the official games. You would never know. At the end of the split, you would never know that was a fact. I think that is like mad underrated coaching, bro, because I don't know what you're telling these players or how you're framing these games, but it actually implies, I mean, in this KC one, it's even crazier. They were just beating you all the time until that upper bracket, until essentially the official matches. That implies you got your players to a place where they took some of the lessons from the scrims, but not the loss. What would you say to this, Peter? Because I think this is like a crazy detail that's underrated. Like, I think people hope every pro will be like that, but I think most pros aren't like that from my experience, bro.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit hard for me because, I was one of the coaches where if my players were winning too much scrims, I would start handicapping them, like casting blind, things like this, so that every
I don't know why you're on some pioneer shit where they have to do fucking put weights on.
If our win rate is 75% too many days in a row, we're not going there again.
Okay.
So when things were bad, we were just losing all the scrims all the time. When things were never allowed to get good.
Okay.
So it's yeah, no, I'm laughing because there've been times on teams in the past where we even win with stuff like casting blind, so I force players to roll swap and things like this, right, in order to get good script. But no, from what I've heard about from talking with other coaches, I mean, there's certain. It's not just about. It's about how you can get things from a loss, right? And this is often really challenging because sometimes you need to learn lessons that you can only learn from a loss, right? So let me give an example. You pick Vi into Xayah. Xayah's not in the meta right now, right? But there've been times like 2024, right, where Xayah is a really strong champion, Vi is a really strong champion. Everyone knows that Vi, if you pick Vi and enemy has Xayah, you're gonna hate your life, right? Like it's gonna be really, really hard for you to play. But maybe you need to first pick the Vi to deny the Vi because you can't pick Xayah because Ezreal's really strong or Kog'Maw's in the meta or something like this, right? But so you need to go and scrim Vi into Xayah, and there's a high chance that you pick Vi into Xayah, you're going to lose that scrim, and then your players are going to go, what a fucking waste of time. Like any kind of moron coach knows that you can't pick Vi into Xayah, right? Whereas what the coach needs to go and say is, okay, we have this pick, I need to test how bad it is for stage, and I also need to see if we are forced to draft into this in stage, you have good problem-solving ability that you can go and fix things even if it seems bad, Even if we're going to go and play Sivir or we're going to go and play Caitlyn, which is not like a typical Handsummer. Like, I just looked at the stats, right? Like Handsummer's win rate on Caitlyn career is like 40% and his overall win rate is like 60%, right? To give you an idea.
Which is hilarious because normally when Caitlyn's in the meta, it's mega OP and it's like the main pick. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you have to pick these things, right? And you have to learn how to play them at a really, really high level, right? So learning from losing, first of all, is always hard, right? But if you're rookies and you're losing to G2, you're thinking, okay, we're going to go copy G2 and things. But you're G2, you're the defending champions, you expect to win every split in this year, and you're just getting fucking destroyed in scripts, and you're still learning, and you still have you don't, it's not hitting you too hard. Like, the ego's not hitting you too hard. That's a really good thing. And also, the thing that I found really, really good, the thing that is impressive to me about G2 is what Roman said that they did, which is they did like a date night with all the players. Like, all the players had to do one-on-one dinners with at least once in the split. So every single player and every single person of coaching staff, or Hans Summer and Caps, they had to go somewhere, had to eat dinner together, do a photo to show that they did it, and the players took that fucking seriously and didn't bitch about it, and they actually completed that, because I can tell you that people people, if you try that on certain teams, there's no.
Oh, some people would even just lie, Peter, and not even go to the date and say they did it. Like, we'll just both say we did it, right? And then not even just leave the house for 2 hours or something, right?
I'm pretty sure they didn't call it a date night. But,
Sure.
But that's really what's going on here, right? Like, and to me, as a coach, and that's like kind of a trust. Like, you have to trust your coaching staff.
Yeah.
You have to trust the talk if you're going to buy into something like this, which I can see as a coach how it can benefit. But I have no idea how I would pitch that to my players, especially when coaching.
Yes.
Like, I'm just trying to think how would I get impact to like do something like this. So the fact that G2 got their players to do this also very important.
Well, it's got to be hard to like question, it at a certain point. It's like, well, I mean, they must be onto something, right? I mean, look at their results the last few years, right? Oh, well, if Dylan wants us to go out on a date, I guess we better go on a date. Or Romain, former Optic GM, by the way, that little time when Optic did play, Romain was there, but green wall till I die, whatever. But regardless, I mean, why would you as a player, you can't doubt it.
No.
You just got to go with it. And the camaraderie is huge. I mean, to be like a unit like that there's something to be said for that, because like we said earlier, a lot of teams are constantly changing players and this and that. And this team has been, through it, so it's in building from scrims. It's like you want to win. I get that, like, especially for Western players, because, I mean, you do need the confidence. It's just, I feel like G2 are a team that they have, especially obviously Caps, but everybody at this point, they've been in big moments and lost. And, I mean, scrims can't, I got to imagine scrims can't bother them as much, as maybe a younger player or a player that doesn't have that experience that is questioning themselves. I feel like there's confidence in these players that they know everything's gonna work out. They're gonna figure it out. They have time and time again. I mean, shit, really, like, outside of that one really year that we don't really want to talk about, was it 21 with Reckless? Was it 21 or 20?
Yes, 21.
Yeah. Outside of that, it's like they always kind of figure out a way,
Yeah. Yeah, they should have that they should get a poster put in the G2 office, keep calm and carry on winning LEC. That should be what the sign says. There you go. There's the meme for you. Right, okay, Peter, what is your good point?
So my good point is going to be on KC. I think you kind of touched on it about KC putting up good pressure on G2. But let's be clear, like, so before every season, I do a power rankings, right? And the cheat code for power rankings is, if you want to, so I do a power rankings for start of the year and power rankings for where I think teams will end the year. And the trick code, which I'm just going to say, if for power rankings at the start of the years, the teams that make the fewest changes will be at the top at the start of the split, right? Like, it's just a cheat code, right? They're going to have pre-existing synergy. It's not like,
of course,
it's not like anything special about that. But there is one exception to the rule, and the one exception to the rule is KC, right? KC made a ton of changes last year, and they made a ton of changes this year, and they're still this strong at the start of the first split. Like, they're doing, like, I don't know what KC are doing. I don't know whether it's maybe they start scrimming at the start of December, right? Maybe they have like some kind of mega intense, you have to play a certain amount of solo queue duo or something. Like, I have no idea what they are doing, but there is something about how KC are getting their players to adapt quickly and start at the start of the split, which allows them to buck the trend. And they are kind of the only org that does this. Even G2, when G2 was making changes, they started weak. Like when they brought in Labrov and Skumon, it took them time, right? But you look at Busio, right? And my good point is about how KC have...
I mean, Busio was arguably an MVP candidate, mate. He was mega.
Exactly. But like, Busio was arguably the best player in the league.
Yeah.
But it would have taken, if you put Busio on almost any other team in this league, maybe if you even put Busio into G2, I'm not sure that he starts this strong this quickly. And I've got no idea what their secret is. I assume it's because they start scrims really, really early, but they have somehow managed to do it 2 years in a row. And I would say that, drafts aside, purely on gameplay, I think KC were you could argue the better team in that final, but the draft, like, they were quite far behind, right? So for me, that is that to me is very impressive. And, Busio, I think Busio, maybe, I'm a huge Busio fan, right? But I think I've even underestimated Busio coming into the split, because I thought, oh, this guy, he's going to be a top support by the end of the year, but he's going to be like a free support. Alvaro's going to be better than him. Maybe Lavrov, he's going to be at the same level as Lavrov. Jun is going to be up there, right? But he's not going to be, he's going to take him time, right? He's going to come in and it's going to take him time. And no, he is like top 3 player in the league immediately, right? And looks absolutely fucking incredible. And, I give some of that credit goes to Busio, obviously, but I don't know what KC are doing that allows them to adapt, to integrate players that quickly into their org, because there's something that they're doing. And they deserve credit for that, even though they lost the final. Like I would have said before the split, even after best of ones, I wouldn't have said KC are like necessarily a favorite going into the year. I would have said G2 are favorites. But now, like, clearly if they can integrate them this quickly, this is a team that arguably could be the favorite going into spring. If you told me now I'm putting KC at number 1 on my tier list coming into spring, I wouldn't hold it against you, even though you should probably put G2. But I wouldn't hold it against you after watching that final and knowing how scrims work.
What do you think?
It's got to be. Reaper had some rough springs with Cloud9 where they made a ton of roster changes and this and that. So, he has experience with, revolving doors, if you will. But Busio's a very flexible player. Hell, he makes his debut on Azir support. And, like, that is... I think I might have said in the video I said that's got to be like... Talk about having some serious balls, man. Just go out there and say, fuck it. I am going to play Azir support in my debut. And it goes about as well as we could have imagined. And at the same time, it's like to have that confidence in yourself. And we already knew he was solid, and just obviously with FlyQuest, he was great, right? It's just alongside Kalist, and Kalist is a stud in his own right as well, and he's had a revolving door at support. It becomes a situation where, I don't know, it's like a match. It's just a match. Like, once in a while you get a duo that just kind of hits it off right away, and it's just, sometimes you scratch your head and you're like, damn, we don't want to split this up. Like, you think of like, Sven Mithi, obviously, LEC, great example, but just shit. Right away, and Yahoo is like statistically he was not like disgusting in the LCK, but on that DRX team he wasn't trash. And that DRX team we're on struggle street for a lot of the season. So him joining the team and it kind of helped him with that. Like, just hey, this is not going to be. This is a good spot to be. They have it. Reaper has made an environment where they all feel like, I don't know, you just must have them all feeling confident, I guess. I that's all I could assume.
I'll go and I'll take the point I made about G2 a second ago and their coaches. I'll flip it to KC. Bro, think about the narrow escape KC had, because if you watched this final and at the end of game 2, I said, now here's a gun against your head. Predict who wins the series. You'd say G2's winning the next game, mate. This is over. This is 3-0. Now imagine this for a second. If that had been 3-0, then KC, think about the story we just said, would have beaten G2's ass in scrims all fucking tournament long, beating everyone else, and then just got 5-0'd in the playoffs. Like, that would be the most insane, like, dagger to the heart ever. Not only did they come back, by the way, almost do a reverse sweep of the most iconic team in League of Legends history in Europe, but then also, bro, the Yahoo guy, who probably is the least actually hyped player because he hasn't been, like, the best player on the team, and he isn't the best mid laner in the league, he also basically made almost the hero play to win game 5. Like, it could have gone slightly better, but I'm with you, Peter. Actually, in the end, low-key, KC actually comes out of this final looking awesome for a team that lost. In fact, the second the final lost, the first thing I even thought was kind of a bummer that we don't get LCK and LPL with the top two teams going. I'd love to see this team at first stand now. Like that, you'd be able to see what they were able to do next. Like, I actually think KC give an excellent account of themselves in this playoffs. The only series they have to regret is just that upper bracket one against G2. That's it. And that was, again, people like Yao, rookie to LEC, playing his first ever time against a team that knows they win every bloody split. So I actually thought this was fucking awesome. Yeah, I thought it was good. And I agree with you earlier. If I actually had to say, I actually think slightly KC outplayed them in the final, mate. I think that's why when I get to my point, pretty soon it's going to be about Game 5 and all the Caps play. Like, I think that play deserves to be considered iconic, because otherwise they would have lost that fucking game. Like, they were well on their way to actually what would have been considered by plebs with the Goldie like a throw, but actually were just flat out losing the game, mate. They were just making stride after stride after stride. They were poised to win that. So I think for KC, yeah, considering you lost, this is about the best moral victory you can ever get, mate. This was awesome. Like, if I'm KC, by the way, think about what you just said earlier as well, Peter. That's even what I'm telling them as a coach. Like, bro, they've had that roster all last year. They've already won LEC with this roster. That was our first outing officially. We almost beat them. Fuck, next season we're going to beat them 3-0 in the final. That's what I'm telling our players. Like, we're actually the best team. If anything, if I'm KC, I just low-key hope that G2 goes to first stand, gets absolutely destroyed, and then we start the next split. Because I'm not going, so I can't get destroyed. I can't have my confidence destroyed. I ended my confidence on a pretty big high of like, well, you know, Caps is Caps and he made the miracle play fair play. I can sleep easy on that. That's another thing. You can also sleep easy when it's Caps makes the hero play. If it'd be like fucking Labrov, yeah, which he almost sort of did with that Nico play, that's the nightmare. Like, some fucking guy I don't respect. Everyone can handle Caps winning. We're all okay with that. Like, we've seen it happen enough times. What's that stat? He won like 18 out of 24 splits or something fucking mental, which is like, Jesus, can he give some to someone else? Can someone else win the odd one? No, I tell you what, I'll just segue into my point now. My point, obviously, in the good section is fucking Game 5 of this series. Like, if I'm saying it was shit in the MKOI KC one, this was actually one of the best LEC games ever played, this Game 5. And think about that, the idea of it being Game 5 with a reverse sweep on the line as well. So if people didn't watch the match, there are so many aspects that would make it look like G2 can't lose this game. They have all the fucking inhibs down for KC. They have the gold lead. They have the objectives. But if you saw the way that game was starting to go, mate, I've seen this a lot of esports matches in my life. And I'm telling you, the reason why Caps's play on the fucking Kiahu Aurora is goated is because, bro, his team was ready to lose that match. I've seen players like that where it's like, you're almost at the point where it's like, you just don't want to be the one that makes the game losing play. You're like all waiting, and or even you do the fight, and it's almost like a solo game. You just pressing buttons and hoping you win the fight and just hoping you trip over and win the game. Mate, that fucking play, I'm telling people, you have to go back for real. Imagine you doing an old school Jack team fight tactics or whatever the fuck it was called back in the day, team fight breakdown or whatever he used to call it. Imagine that, because you know the best thing I used to say about that, the best and the worst part, is he would go frame by frame. The bad part is that would then make people think they saw all that live. It's like, you didn't see any of that live. He didn't see that. By the way, spoiler, he didn't see it live till he slowed it down. But if you watch this one, it is literally like, we're talking edge of your seat, knife edge, like tiniest fraction ever wins this game for G2. Because if you go back and he allows that Aurora to ever fucking attack, like, the game's just over. They take the dragon. There's no way you're winning that one. Like, that would absolutely be an epic comeback. And in fact, the joke is, I think the Kiahu play that was paused would now be considered like an iconic play in LEC history. It'd be like, welcome to the league, Kiahu. I guess you're a fucking champion now. So I think that moment, I love historical moments. For me, that's like an LEC equivalent of that bloody 2024 final that Faker made with all the fucking Galio players. If you remember that, when he was against fucking BLG, it's up there. It's on that sort of level where it's like, because the thing that's so crazy about Caps, I'm at this point on some of the insight is, bro, this is where being a mega veteran but who's also won a lot is OP as fuck. Because how is he so calm? He's like timing it perfectly in that way. Everyone else, you know what it's like in a game fight. Like I said, it's like you're playing a solo game. People just go in, mate. They go crazy. People lose their minds in pressure moments in games, and most people's choices, press buttons, just do something. You just do something and hope. The poise that he had to land that was unbelievable. And then finally, if you've ever watched his career, the young Caps who came in the LEC would never have made that play. He'd have fucking flashed in 50 minutes earlier. You know what I mean? This shows what a mega veteran he's become. Like, that's the true side of a winner, by the way. Not even being the best player, but like, you just make the play. You have the play that decides the whole series. I thought that game 5 was fucking mega. It was genuinely an excellent game. What do you think, Andrew?
It was a crazy game. It was a crazy game. I mean, you know, obviously talking about lack of hype earlier, but we did bring it up. Like, the series ended up being great. And Game 5 ended up being like iconic. Caps, this is why Caps is the next Hall of Legends player, right? Because he is that guy. He is. When push comes to shove, hey, we're 45 minutes into this game. Like, Caps is the one coming through and leading the team and is a stabilizing force for this team in general. And for, like, to have to, actually find a way to win the game in Game 5. Because it was you have all the inhibs down. You've got all the objectives, but you're still not finding a way to win against a draft that should not be able to, stop your siege. But at the same time, you're just push and pull, trying to get to the nexus. You don't see many games like that. You really don't. And it's almost like a case study for teams to be like, hey, what would we do in this situation? Because G2 found a way, and hell, even KC, you got to give them credit for dragging it out the way they did. You really do. It was a great Game 5. It was a perfect end to what was. The reverse sweep, of course, would have been electric. But it was awesome.
No, by the way, there's another thing I didn't even emphasize enough. Imagine being KC like halfway through that game. How do you possibly win with all the inhibs down like that? Like, any mistake you make, the whole game's over. So I think it's nuts they even got in the position to win too. It's nuts too. Respect.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing I'd say about this game, firstly, is it has to be Qiahu who wins this game, right? Because there's an Anivia on one side against 3 tanks in a center, right? So not good into Anivia, tanks not that great into Anivia unless you have like long range, use the tanks to counter engage. But it's really, really hard for them to play the game. The one person who Anivia is kind of bad against is Aurora, and he has the ability he has the most freedom to do things in this game, and they probably pick the Anivia with the Aurora threat because they think, okay, put it on Qiahu to win the series. Qiahu makes an insane hero play. There's a hero play he makes. All the inhibs are down. He catches Hans Summer before Hans Summer can use his Zhonya's in his base. And, in a different world where KC win the series, it's like, it's a sliding door scenario. KC win the series. Qiahu is the hero. He's had the ability to carry it, And let's be clear, G2 didn't play that final game as flawlessly as they could. When 3 inhibs are down, you should probably win the game. Hans Summer should probably Zhonya's the Aurora. They should probably, when they're sieging the tier 2 top tower, they should maybe play that differently. There's one fight around the 3rd dragon, I think, where Broken Blade and Skumon are just standing past their Anivia's wall, and KC immediately snap engage on them, and it's a complete disaster, right? So it's not like G2 played the series perfect. It's not like they played the game perfectly, and KC did a lot of good things to keep that series close and to make it exciting. However, there was one person that you can say in this entire game was basically flawless, and that was Caps. And it's not just flawless in the sense of how he's positioning his walls, how he's playing safely, how he's playing to his limit. It's also that he's picking this thing in draft, knowing that the enemy team has an Aurora, which is not good for you. And he's making it work. And I think, sure, he got the hero highlight play at the end, which, like you said, deserves to be one of those things. When they do his Hall of Legends thing, I hope that that's one of the plays that they put up. Maybe they've already decided that Anivia is not going to be one of the champions, which they highlight for Caps. But it was definitely a really key play. It wins the entire series because I think that was when they were going to give Elder or they were going to deny. So it was a really critical point in the game. He's blind. He's doing it blind because obviously Aurora's invisible. And it's just very, very impressive play from Caps. And G2 again use swap Caps for even Jojo. Do they win the series? Probably not.
No.
And I think Caps deserves all the credit. Another title, Fedusim.
Yes. In fact, I'll just say in general, in the end, the 2 players who just were smurfing the whole split teams out once we got to the playoffs was just Skumon and Caps. These guys just can't lose, apparently, in their position. They're playing really good players, but they just, by the way, Skumon was smurfing at the beginning of this series too. He was fucking killing money. So, okay, let's go to the last section, which is obviously the ugly. So, Andrew, what is ugly at the moment?
The NLC situation, and it even got uglier since, this past week with, I don't love the whole witchcraft thing that's going on right now, but regardless, you see all this talent coming out and saying we aren't getting paid. We weren't getting paid. You see NLC drop Trouble. You see Aragon come out and say, hey, there you weren't paying me really either. I had to fight tooth and nail to try and get paid. And it just seems that all these teams constantly in ERLs, tier 2 teams, aren't paying their staff on time. They don't pay the regions themselves don't pay their talent on time. It's just, I can't believe it, because I talk so highly of the ERL system because there is nothing like it in North America at all. And that's why, a big reason why I think NA will always be behind Europe, is because there's actually a development path that works in Europe. And it's very reminiscent to me of even ice hockey in Canada, but that's a whole nother thing entirely. But it's crazy how, hell, they didn't even have a cast at all. They couldn't even go find. I mean, you've got casters following you on Twitter and things with under 1,000 followers. There's people that would love to go get tape. Like, really, we can't go get a couple people together to throw up some, just a cast. Hell, they'd probably do it for free. Just give them an opportunity. It's a real shame. I don't know what the NLC are doing. I know it fuels the Los Ratones crap because they're like, oh, LR are out, so we're making that region. And yeah, maybe that was partially the case, but as you're still running a business in a way. The region is a business. Yeah. You've got to be able to actually run a fucking business. And I feel like in esports, it's really common. You end up with people that don't know how to run a business, and I don't. It's just ugly. It truly is. I couldn't believe it when I see on Twitter that they are dropping great talent, and not to mention, hell, maybe they haven't even, have they paid these people in the last 6 months? It's I don't know how you expect to win any favor with anybody when you can't simply pay people. I really don't.
I think the funny thing from all of this, well, no, it's not funny, right? But they then they make a statement about it saying, oh, our talent has been paid just a little bit late. And then, there's late fees in the contract, apparently, that they didn't pay the late fees. They were just like, oh, we're going to pay you late. And then people were like, oh, what about the late fees? And oh, yeah, we paid you. Well, those kind of things are in your contract. And I don't know who said this. I don't know whether it was you, Thorin, or whether it was Richard Lewis, or whether it was somebody else. But somebody said something about the NLC situation, which really, really stuck with me, which is, as fans, we can see what a shit show everything is on X, right? And that's where all of these revelations are coming out. But the people who are organizing these kind of things they don't care about X. They don't want to interact with anyone on X. The real place you go to see what's going on here is how they're presenting themselves on LinkedIn. Yes. Right? Because LinkedIn is, and I can tell you that the guys because I did this out of curiosity. I just went and checked on LinkedIn what was going, and immediately, it's not well, they don't say it's not Los Ratones, right? But it's not Los Ratones that the reason the NLC was successful last year. It's we increased numbers, we brought hype to this region, our innovative strategies, are like bringing huge exposure and things like this, right? It's this kind of thing which really, really is disgusting to somebody like me, who you go and see what. Part of the problem with the NLC issue is nobody from the company is making a statement until the entire situation is untenable, right? Like, it's gotten to such a point where you have to go and say something. But you can bet your bottom dollar that you go to LinkedIn, very, very quick to claim credit, very, very slow to accept any responsibility, and obviously, they're not accepting any responsibility. They're not putting their hands up on LinkedIn and going and saying something. And you can always tell, right? If there's some situations, you always wonder, why are people doing this? Don't people realize that fans matter? Don't people realize that a grassroots project is important, right? Or don't people in management realize that short-term thinking isn't going to go and build you a sustainable product in the long term? These people do realize, right? But that's not what they care about. What they care about is LinkedIn. right? And what they're going to be able to, the short-term story, the short-term narrative that they can sell there to put themselves in a better position in the future, right? And I didn't see it at the start. I just worked, but when I can't remember whether it's on a show or whether it was a thing somebody said on Twitter, but when I understood what was being said on LinkedIn, it made a lot more sense to me that we're in this situation now, right? Because obviously the reason NLC was successful last year wasn't because there was some great innovation or some great change in your strategy. It's because it's because Cadro decided he wanted to be an NLC. Yes. And why did he decide he wanted to be an NLC? Probably because he's British, or because he thought this is an ERL where my streamer team is guaranteed to go to European Masters, right? It's one of the weakest. It's one of the weakest regions. It's not because you did any great innovation, right? And I guess that's why we're here where we are now. And to me, lots of people have lost their livelihoods. Lots of people are have staked their careers and beliefs in this. And we're in a situation now where you can't get casters. And when you get these amateur casters in who are friends of people who shouldn't really be casting there, when you have champion selects, because I saw this on Reddit, there's like a champion selects where the casting is just empty room. It's just an empty room because the caster's got it fucked off. You have like these kind of people being the ones who are given the opportunities to go and cast in these kind of situations. The entire situation is a complete shit show. But for me, it starts from leadership, right? That's what kind of all I have to say.
Yeah, what I would say is... go on.
No, you're good.
All right, basically, the ugliest thing about this is that it's essentially just a microcosm of why esports quite literally has taken decades to be taken seriously, because the behaviour you have seen on display here is ubiquitous throughout the esports industry, and even more so the further back in time you go. So there's two classic pieces of behaviour here. One is you yourself are doing what we say in English is you steal from Peter to pay Paul. You don't actually have enough liquid cash or investment to actually make your project run. So what you do is you very cynically sit down and figure out who can I pay the latest or just not pay at all, and essentially how long will I get away from it. Like, instead of me not paying someone like a normal job and then the next month they'd be like, what's going on, I can't do this, I need my rent. Sometimes in esports you can keep it going 6 months, a year, and that person might not say anything. And if people don't understand, in the short term, yes, that person's being a little bit cowardly by not immediately just sounding the alarm, being like, hey, I haven't been paid. But unfortunately they're being selfish themselves, because what they're thinking is, if I sound the alarm now and the project is over because they really can't run things, I'm never going to get paid. So my only chance to get paid is hope that this company can survive long enough that they get some more money and then I'm the first one paid. That's actually what a lot of people are gambling on. So unfortunately, that's why you now see people coming out the woodwork like, hey, I haven't been paid for ages. Because unfortunately, I understand why. They have their own rent to pay. They have their own mouth to put food in. They have to, in the short term, just think about how do I get something before this inevitably comes tumbling down and doesn't work anymore. Also, by the way, now's the perfect time for it to happen. Because of the Los Ratones thing, there's the second part of esports history that I fucking despise, which is, as Peter pointed out, you strip out the most important context. In fact, in this case, it's the entire mechanism for why your league numbers were up and looked excellent. And because if you actually told the public and the business world and any future investors, by the way, you know that brilliant year we had, well, we're never having that again, are we? Because fucking Los Ratones isn't in the league anymore and they're gone. You don't do that. What you pretend is, you pretend that's to do the shit you did and the way you spread the league and the way you've found talent and you've set, and what you're trying to do there is one of the reasons why esports has been continually set back so many times. You're doing it in English is you are selling someone a false bill of goods. You are pretending, essentially, like getting on this stock now, it's going to the moon, but you actually know it can only go down. And you're just trying to con a new person to get on this merry-go-round and put their money in, which you will then use to pay the talent and pay for the costs, etc. Then also you go and look at this. Here's why I agree with it being in the ugly section. This was just ugly from beginning to end. First of all, as Andrew says, this was like 2 straight weeks of every day you'd wake up, and if you viewed it, your algorithm's going to feed you the next drama. Another person that, in my case, I barely know is coming forward saying, I wasn't paid. What's going on here? There's a double angle to this. One, they just didn't pay even talent. Even the fuckers who pay on camera. It's one thing when you don't pay a guy backstage who I don't even know what he does then. When you don't pay the talent, you're not going to pay like fucking some famous casters that I've seen on LEC. You're out of your mind, mate. That already is a massive red flag, but it also shows how shit your business must be if you can't pay the people who were the face of your business. Then, and by the way, there was even a brilliant story I want to just bring up here for people who didn't follow the Twitter drama. So Aragon, who was obviously quite a well-known European caster, he not only wasn't paid, but because they don't pay him for ages, stopped working with them, and then he was involved in a team in NLC, and they had the fucking gall to ask him as the coach to appear in an interview on the league that doesn't pay him for the work he did as a talent. That's how fucking shameless these people are. Like, that's like, it's one thing, mate, that's like you're fucking me and pissing in my face afterwards. Like, what the fuck? Then on the talent thing, that was mad egregious. So not only do you have people who, by the way, in the case of people like Troublelink, I think they should literally be on LEC and at Worlds and stuff, mate. You've got them on the shitty little NLC. And even worse, if people don't know, NLC was actually a pipeline for people like Troublelink and the Foxshops of the world to come through to the LEC Jamada and get the next spot. Well, already you've killed that, and now, in theory, only the most desperate young talent's ever going to come to you now. And on top of it, you didn't just not pay them, which is already an injury, if you see where I'm going here. The insult added to the injury was you had the gall to do a public statement, that one they did on Twitter, where you actually imply you've chosen to go a different direction away from this talent. You haven't, you just can't pay them. But you're pretending, and this is egregious as fuck, you're almost pretending they're not good enough for you and you've chosen someone else. Fuck you. You don't ever get to say that when they're way better than you deserve, overqualified, and you didn't pay them for their work. Like, in that scenario, I know you might trick a few, like, hapless idiots who don't know better, but again, you're already ruining your own business and you fucked all your relationships. Do you really have to, like, lie as well and just be egregiously, like, almost evil at that point in time? Because here's an angle you haven't even thought of if you're the NLC. What if I believed that? What if I was another little broadcaster that was thinking of hiring Troublelink and I thought, oh, maybe actually behind the scenes she's a dickhead or something, like maybe she's just not good at her job. You're now going to fuck up that person's future career with like a bad reference almost. I know it was implied because it was corporate speak, but that was there. And then also, I'll just throw this out there because I think this is mental too, which is almost like some sort of fucking like metaphor for the problems of the league. As you guys have pointed out, it's worse than that. At one point they had a game where the game feed just disappeared. Like, it was as though the actual broadcast was fading out like a fucking Back to the Future 1 photo of Marty McFly's family as every element just disappears and was never there in the first place, I guess. So you almost couldn't believe how bad it is. It's why actually, if anything, by the way, they're lucky this Witchcraft revamped Los Ratones with Whipple lineups even back, mate, because that is like a last ditch thing that's going to give them any interest whatsoever in that league. Because I'm with you, they essentially, if you're a hardcore fan on X, you just hate the league after this. There's no upside to it except to watch Witchcraft play, right? That's about it.
Hell, I hearing about X, and like you said, there might be an idiot that's going to read what NLC said and said, oh, you know what? Maybe it is Trouble. Maybe it is Aragon. Maybe it is this person. Maybe what had pissed me off more than anything was, I forget who it was, and it wasn't some piss random. It was somebody with a, it's still, from my perspective, grew up piss random. But, like, they were calling out casters like, oh, you guys are too big to do the NLC broadcast. Right. And it's like, really? Too big? No, it's because I'm not going to get fucking paid. Like, how can you be so blind to literally seeing somebody's, like, they are not going to pay me? No. Why would I do that when my colleagues in the industry don't, like, are just got screwed by them? Personally, Aragon should have went on the interview and then said something about to play off of, like, I feel like Marshawn Lynch said he was only there to get paid. Yes. But I'm trying to think of a way where he could have went on there and made a reference to not getting paid and hoping to get paid. I'm only on here hoping I get paid. Like, that would have been great from my perspective.
Obviously, the joke here is everyone who's talent on the LEC, I'll do the banter for you, is that everyone who's talent on the NLC wishes that they had the futures market enabled so they could get their pay in advance even. That would be even better, wouldn't it? Whatever. It's not my best material, Peter, but I'm working with nothing here, mate. So anyway, there's one last thing about this topic as well. On the thing Peter just said, because actually it's completely legal, if someone doesn't pay you in the time of an invoice, and if you don't, you can look up on the European Commission what the invoice amount is. It's usually about 60 days, I believe, for an invoice. If someone doesn't pay you, you can then re-invoice invoice them and add a late fee. I think the late fee, by the way, is even something like 8% or something outrageous. So you can put that right. They not only didn't pay the late fees, Peter, they implied, like, we just declined to. Like, so you don't get to you don't get to just go into a legal domain and go, I just don't think that should be a thing, so I'm just not going to pay that. Like, that's not how that works. And then lastly, I'll just say this last thing. Here's also what I hate about this, because I was tying it to the bigger issue of when people have been sold a false dream in esports. One of the reasons why it's called a dream is the idea it won't actually happen, it's fantasy. We don't want that to be what people think about this industry. We want people to believe that if you get hired to an actual Riot-approved segment of European League of Legends, one of the major regions in the world, that that's a real job. And when you tell your mum you've gotten hired to that, you can pay your rent and buy food and have a normal life and build a career. We don't want you to then go back to your mum like, sorry, actually I can't even pay the next 6 months rent. I can't get out my contracts. I'm in Germany and I had to. That is a nightmare. That is a dream turned into a nightmare. That is going to make people think esports is some Mickey Mouse like fucking carnival barker shit where they're just going to disappear overnight with your kids at this point in time. Like, this is outrageous. This is all the worst esports stories, but in 2026. And lastly, don't worry, I'll never miss a chance to let Riot catch a stray. This is also where I'm going to very briefly bring in Riot. Sorry, Riot, you can't desperately force Los Ratones into your league, the LEC, in an LEC Versus tournament that's not LEC, but it is, because you've seen the views they've had from this exact league, which again I'll point out is an official ARL of your competition system. Why were you in this engagement, by the way? Is there a hotline people can contact? Could they have get you to do something about it? Because here's why, if you're right, you can't just wash your hands of this. I'll tell you a very quick side story. When Monte Cristo ran into problems with Renegades, one of the things they claimed early, way before they banned him for the whole thing with Romania, is they claimed that Monty had been like negligent as an owner because he hadn't paid his team on time. Now, it actually turned out it was literally a logistical fuck-up where Riot had sent the checks to the wrong team house. They'd sent it to like TDK's team house or something mental. So Monty hadn't even received the money to pay his players, but because they'd heard that it was late, they were like on his ass like this. Bro, that was like in a 1 month time span. Where are you on a league? Bro, as far as I'm concerned, like, if I'm supposed to believe the ERL system is a feeder into the LEC, that's a Riot League as far as I'm concerned. So I would hope as well, this isn't just like hope they work it out. Like, if you're Riot, sorry, I don't care about witchcraft. You should literally either get this sorted tomorrow or you shut this down. You say this can't be a feeder league anymore, or someone else has to, you have to sell it, or, you know, that's what you did to Monty with his team. If you're Riot, you've had such a hands-on approach to everything else. I don't know how you can just sit back and say there's no biggie here. Again, these are even your people like Trouble at your people. How are you just going to ignore that? So I actually hope Riot does get involved. I hope it's not just back and forwards on Twitter and people threatening legal action, which sadly very rarely happens. It takes so many years. I hope actually Riot just gets involved and fucking slaps these guys on their body, as it were.
They need to. They're the big dog that needs to come in and, I mean, finally say enough's enough. This is bullshit. Like, unfortunately, it's been happening for a long time. Absolutely. You know, here and there, but it's reached a point now where it's got to be done.
Okay then, Peter, what is your ugly point?
Okay, so my ugly point, since kind of this is our episode to wrap up the season, is we talked about G2, we talked about KC, we touched on quite a bit. The team I want to talk about, just to finish off, is Vitality. And why is it going to be my ugly point for Vitality? So my ugly point for Vitality is that basically, I think it's really, really ugly that... Okay, so I like Pad, I like Mac. These are guys that respect a lot, right? But I don't like the interview that he gave after his team lost, right? So to give context, the Vitality versus KC, you know, we talk all up for KC, you know, and KC, very, very difficult team to beat, right? Like, they're not a team which will make mistakes and fuck up and just give you the game for free. You have to go and beat them, okay? Vitality, game 1, beat KC. Okay, the best of 3, low bracket, right? So loser goes home. Game 2 is a really, really close game where Vitality could easily win. You know, talk about sliding doors moment. Imagine Vitality win that game 2. The game is decided in game 2 because Humanoid, like, Vitality get a miracle teamfight win, and Humanoid chases into Kana's Aurora and gets like one shot from like 70% health or something, right? Mm-hmm. And he just dies, and then the game is over. But the point is that it's shown that Vitality KC, both incredibly close, very, very hard fought series. And then you go into the final game of the series. And your draft in the final game of the series
This was an
Seraphine
unbelievable bot lane, I know.
This is an unbelievable draft.
It was
right?
nuts.
Like it is one of the worst drafts that I've like ever seen in pro. And I'm saying this is some. Okay, so I'll just say what I drafted. It's Kasante top, Sinjao, jungle, TF mid, Seraphine bot, Seraphine Braum bot lane. Okay, which is like completely.
And remember, the person talking right now is the Seraphine picker of the fucking LCS. Talk your shit, homie.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'll be honest, like, I've had the two big Seraphine players, Blackhead and Danny, who are like the two biggest Seraphine players in the history of League of Legends from the AD carry position, right? And if this is your draft, right, the problem is that you have Seraphine Braum bot, you cannot pick Seraphine Braum bot if you care at all about the enemy support being able to roam, because you have literally zero threat on the enemy AD carry. If you have like Seraphine Nautilus or something like this, maybe you have like threat on the AD carry, so the support has to stay in lane. Okay, so the best player coming into the series on KC, maybe you can say Canna over the course of the split, but the person who was playing the best is Busio. You give Busio complete freedom to do whatever the fuck he wants to do on the map. You pick this kind of cheese comp after you've beaten KC playing standard. You then go and play game 2 where you pick your Yasuo comp. Okay, fine, it's a bit of cheese. But you have so little confidence in your team that you feel that you have to come and cheese KC, and you don't even cheese KC in a comp that feels competent, right? Like this comp would be better if it was TF AD carry and Seraphine mid lane, right? It's so bad because you have a TF with no side lane he can go into. You have Seraphine Braum, which means that you've given opponent freedom to scale, and enemy support, who's the best player on their team, freedom to do whatever the fuck he wants to do on the map, and Busio just completely destroys the entire game, and they can do nothing on the top side because their entire bot side of the map is so unplayable, and therefore KC always have numbers advantage, right, on the top side of the map. And then you go and give this interview afterwards saying, I think our draft was fine, it's just we made too many mistakes, and it's a way to like kind of dodge responsibility. And to me, that is that I really, really dislike, right? And I think Pat is a really, really good coach. It's the first time he's head coached, right? So maybe he feels that he needs to he's under scrutiny or things like this, and maybe he feels that he can't go and say, I just fucked up, or we tried something, it didn't work, we'll come back stronger now, right? But to me, that interview is like I found very, very almost upsetting, I would say, after this, because I felt I'm somebody that has a lot of faith in Vitality, and to be honest, I think there's a world with Vitality. You just play standard against KC, and maybe they win. Like I think Vitality were playing really fucking well in this series. Like Kazi was smurfing no, he wasn't. Humanoid was in the series, and like it looked like they kind of were getting under KC. KC maybe having a bit of nerves after losing to G2 in the upper bracket. But for them to go out in this way and then to respond in that way to them going out, I find a little. So my ugly point is Vitality ending their split in such a way, and I hope that Vitality run it back and they have more faith in their players coming into next split, because I think they can just play standard and be fine. But now it looks like it's another split Vitality fucked up. It's another. This entire roster is garbage. We should scrap everything. Whereas Link has actually had a pretty good split. This split, Humanoid was actually playing pretty well. Mid jungle they were playing pretty well. Nuck was probably the best top in the league, despite the fact that Canna was in the finals. So I think that there's potential here. But yeah, I mean I guess this is just KC winning in scrims, and this is KC making it very hard for teams to beat them. So they you overforce, and then they just counterpunch, right? It's like you're fighting against a boxer who's really good at defense, and then you overpunch, and then they floor you with a counterpunch, right? And which is what happened here. But yeah, like I said, why is it an ugly point? It's an ugly point because I feel Vitality kind of deserve more from their split. I think they were better than GX. I think if they'd gone to Barcelona, they would have been they would have been the fourth best team in the league. But also just the post-game interview, like where you kind of dodge responsibility, for what you've done, right? I really don't like that. As a coach, I think you always take accountability, right, in those kind of, and I dislike it when other.
Well, that's got to be not taking accountability with. You can't blame your team. You can't do that. That's not. Especially as a first-time coach, like. It's winter, you're going to probably run the whole season with these guys. And now, in the back of their mind, they're like, well, shit, this guy is going to throw us under the bus. And, and it just it that is ugly as hell. I mean, I know we have some coaches. I've seen some things. Some coaches might be oversharing now. We've seen that be brought up, but transparency is the best policy, right? But at the same time, like you can't throw your team under the bus. So if you've got to put up a little bit of bullshit, even if you felt that way, you put up a little bit of bullshit, and then you go and you work out whatever you got to work out, and maybe it, you look back at the draft, you say, shit, I really fucked this up. But like, you can't blame your team. Your team does deserve better. It's Vitality were solid. Statistically, they were solid. They're upper half with ease. Humanoid, for better or for worse, is a very good mid laner in the LEC, in my opinion. Statistically, split in. And he had one shitty split last year, but over his entirety, he's been solid for many years now. And just internationally, leaves a little bit to be desired. It is what it is. But like, yeah, Vitality were they were very competitive. They had a chance. Hell, if KC took G2 to 5 games, maybe Vitality doesn't have that, pizzazz that KC does at the upper portion of their abilities, their ceiling. But hell, I mean, KC took G2 to 5 games. Why couldn't Vitality make a decent run in playoffs at Barcelona too?
By the way, I'm definitely with you, Peter. I don't care what placing GX had. That is the nature of the fucking bracket draw. Vitality was better than GX this split. They just were. Like, in the whole fucking time, pretty much, except for, like, week 1 or something like that. So, I agree, that's slightly fugazi. Like, you just had to play KC early because of how the bracket worked out. Remember, I'll just remind people again, this is actually also where G2 were low-key dicks. They just fuck around in the BO1s, come in as the 7th seed. Right, I'm KC. I'm rewarded for being number 1 seed. Second round of the upper bracket, I have to play G2 immediately. And as you say, Peter, there's a world where Vitality just beats me now and I have to feel like 5th to 6th in the tournament. Like, what? But that's just the nature of people not doing their best in the BO1. So there's that. Then also, I will say this. This is also where what Peter does is he'll never lie. He just admits things he doesn't want to talk about. So if you're up 1-0 over the best team in the league, if I'm your boy Knack, it's not time to go, Coach, can I have another one of those Yasuo games? It'll be sick. Look, here's what's weird, Peter. This will sound contradictory, but I actually do fuck with the idea he even asks his coach for that. Because that is kind of gangster. Like, Coach, give me it. I promise we just end the series here. Did lose that game too. Didn't look great. Whatever. But I know what you mean. The reason why I hate the game 3, which remember, in this format, it's the same as a game 5, basically, is first of all, this isn't actually Game 5 failures. We haven't used all the champion picks in the whole game. Like, I could vaguely forgive this if it was a Game 5, because I actually think, put it this way, I'm not a fan of failures still, because I still think a lot of these, like, banger 5-game series, because when you get to Game 4 and Game 5, people play comps they've never played or scrimmed with ever in their lives. Like, what's making it exciting is no one can pilot this shit. That's why you end up with these games that are just crazy. So it's great for entertainment. I think it's terrible if you're someone who's a massive fan of the last 15 years of, like, especially when you watch LCK Bro, like, systematic league where people do things that make sense and they clearly practice those comps. So the thing I hate the most about the Vitality draft on this Game 5 is what you talked about earlier. It's like, bro, this is a really hard comp to make work and not in the best case scenario. And you've also given a couple of your players very low agency in the game. And I hate that. Like, one thing I've learned from talking to a lot of the coaches over the years is the reason why sometimes in a Game 5 scenario, the coach will even let the player pick a pick is because what they want is they want the player to feel comfortable with the kit of the champion he is getting and to feel like he can do things that, in this scenario, one of the problems is you've drafted this like it was a random game and you're just like, here's the comp, boys, play it out. It's like, yeah, but what about all the different situations that can happen in the game? Like, I'm going to have very little sort of like bandwidth to go different places, do different, as you're saying, Peter, if the enemy team even actually cynically looks at what we can't do in the game, they've opened the door for all our best players. Like, Busio, enjoy it, mate. You're roaming all over the map doing whatever you want now. Like, this is ideal for us. I also do think you put your players in a very difficult scenario to win the game. And it doesn't feel great also to lose like that. That's another example. Like, you give them their picks and they lose, okay, fine. If you put them on a comp like this, I'd also sort of feel like, come on, coach, we're not blaming you, but if we had that one back, we don't draft that again, surely.
And I mean, just because I know we'll get it in the comments, what should Vitality have drafted with Seraphine? You want 80 carry mid or like some kind of, hyper carry damage. I don't know whether Victor was in the game or something, maybe something like Victor or an 80 carry mid. to make up for what you lose from having a Seraphine AD carry in terms of damage, and you want some kind of engaged support. You should never play Seraphine form, like unless you really even if you disrespect your opponents, you shouldn't pick Seraphine form. You just shouldn't pick Seraphine form at all, especially not into Casey's comp. And I would say on the pad issue, I'm critical of pad, but I think this is just this shows his lack of experience because I don't think that he comes in with a malicious thing. He's just saying what's on his mind, and sometimes this is not the moment to say what's on your mind when you've just fucked up in the final game of the series, and you should be protecting your players, and you should be like allowing people to focus on the right. But this draft, Seraphine, Sinjao, Cassante is not actually a bad core. The draft can work, but not with TF and Vorm, that's what I say for that. It just makes me very, very sad because obviously Casey completely murdered them in that game. And if anything, we talked about Busio earlier. This was Busio's like probably best game of the.
Also, I'll give you a devil's advocate though. What this makes me think, and this is also why it's genius what Romain did, is. At the beginning, when they released all the draft info, I was like, well, you're going to ruin your own team here. They're going to get fucking clowned on because you never lose. It doesn't fucking matter. Now I wish every team released them because I'll tell you what would completely change my perspective on this game, Peter. If I found Vitality was losing most of the scrims to KC all the time and maybe they can't deal with normal games against them and so they're trying some crazy desperation play or a comp that they've come up with at the last minute with some, from theory crafting and they've got some... If that changed totally my perspective on how the draft was. Whereas in this scenario, I have no idea what happened between these teams. For all I know, maybe they was confident against them, whatever. Anyway, the last point of the show is my point, so we'll go into that. Also, just like Peter conveniently talked about the draft in a series and never mentioned Nako's Yasuo pick, I'm going to have to point out a player that I even seeded it. I know what I'm doing. I seeded it early. He just skipped straight by it on the buffet and went straight to the tater tots of whatever he wanted to talk about in the MKOI series. Brother, if you are going to pick your boy Jojo for every fucking good point every other week, I'm not going to ignore how he played in this fucking series here, Peter. He actually had an excellent split. And in general, by the way, beyond the first split last year, I actually think his split's only gotten better and better and better. He's been really good. He's even got his international game half decent, but fucking hell did he send this one, mate. Like, he was way too hyphy on this one. What do you think of this one, Andrew? Jojo's play in this MKOI series against KC. What do you think?
I mean, he obviously left a lot to be desired, right? I mean, he comes in and you're expecting him to be able to match Yahoo, and if anything, be better than him.
Why not?
And it just, I don't know if it was the big moment. It's like, oh crap, back against the wall. But it seems that sometimes he disappears, and in this case, it was the case, and that's kind of why I go back to the Supa thing earlier. Was like, I feel like Supa shows up more reliably than Jojo. Maybe you give Supa the ball, but in that matchup, Yahoo definitely got the better of him. It wasn't even close. It was one of the bigger diffies in the matchup for sure.
Yeah, I think a little bit of it is on his teammates. I will say, I don't think. Jojo didn't have a great series. I don't think anyone except Illuria really. Supa wasn't bad. Like Illuria and Electric were really were pretty good.
It was also a top gap for sure. Moon definitely got his head kicked into.
Moon kind of suffered. But since we're talking about Jojo, like I do think his Aurora game was pretty fucking awful. I'll be fair. But yeah, okay. Here's what I'll say. I would say that there were times last year where Jojo was not in the first split, but definitely in the second split when they won. He was better than Caps in the split.
Totally fair.
In summer, he was by far the best player on Koi in summer because Illuria was having a bit of a rough time. But obviously they didn't win. But he was the one that was really, really good. And you would have said because Vladdy had a really rough end to the year, he was top 2 mid over the course of the entire year. Maybe if you really like Vladdy, you could say top 3 mid, but he was top 2. I'm pretty sure over the course. Mm-hmm. Now Kyehu comes into the league, and Kyehu, for people that don't know in LCK, he wasn't bad in LCK. He kind of got, when he was against the top mid laners, he looked kind of bad, and when he was against the bottom mid laners, he kind of like stomped them. It was kind of like he was the archetypal from the like. I only watched like 15 games, right? But he was like the archetypal gatekeeper from what I saw. It looked like he suffered into Showmaker, and he was really, really good into like a lot of the other rookie or less experienced mids that he came in. Mm-hmm. But let's be clear, like he was the better mid in the series. And KC, when we talk about KC, you look at KC, best top in the league, best bot lane in the league, right? You have to win. You have to destroy KC in mid jungle, right? G2 kind of did that, right? The Caps and the Skumon. And if you can't do that, you're not beating KC because you're not like Koyan. I'm not going to out team fight KC. It's just not going to happen, right? And their macro is too. It lacks consistency. It's too inconsistent, right, to beat KC. So the way that you need to beat these guys is through mid jungle, and they didn't win the game through mid jungle in this series at all, which is on a bit on Jojo. And the one game where they kind of did win through mid jungle was when Illyria had that insane Kiana game. And sure, a little bit of that, but that was mainly, I think, you have to give the majority of the credit there to Illyria. So yeah, I accept Jojo wasn't as good as he can be. And the thing for Koi is he needs to be better, like next split, or they're not beating KC. And given that G2 are almost certainly going to Worlds, and that will put KC as the number 2 seed, it puts Koi as the team out of the top 3 that are most in danger. So I hope he finds an answer. And yeah, fair enough, Thorin. Good call out. He definitely was the worst man.
Sure. Okay, that will be the end of LEC versus the first split and this show for a while. We'll come back after first stand. In the meantime, though, if you want to find out more about League of Legends, one, Peter still does tweet, and he even tweets about all CB lol and shit I just don't even care about. I even just scroll past that really quickly, but the algorithm knows I saw his account, so it's too late. He's going to be there. And as we talked about, Andrew does basically like every day fucking uploads to his YouTube of pretty much every region in League of Legends, so there's plenty you can go and see there.
Yep. Thank you.